cameras, as I stated before, it has that single camera setup on the back, which was kind of like the exact same camera setup that we saw on the Google Pixel 3 of that time. Even with like the Pixel 4 in some ways, it had that 12.2 megapixel lens. Now it was only that single wide angle lens, and it kind of suffers the same thing as the Pixel 3 and Pixel 4 actually had. So you could only do 4K at 30 on the back, which I think is kind of okay. But the craziest thing, and one of the most important things about this device, was the fact of Google's just processing of their images. They really did some amazing software for their devices, and it's still it's still top tier. Even when I take pixels, pictures on my Pixels, they still look so good, and the quality is arguably sometimes better than what I'm getting on a Samsung Galaxy S21 or the Note 20 or whatever the case is. But I still prefer those phones because of the additional sensors and because of the high resolutions you can film in. But the fact that this camera has that type of capability with that type of software is really, really amazing, and I think it's a really decent camera. I think the thing that limits it the most is the 4K at 60 or lack thereof, as well as no additional sensors. We don't have a telephoto and we don't have an ultra wide sensor, and that does kind of suck in this type of landscape. When you get a phone like this, you want it to have the most amount of capability for as long as possible, and you're already kind of outdated when it comes down to that camera setup, so it's already kind of taking it out in that standpoint as well. So take it as you will, but that's one little area where I'd probably tell people to kind of improve in when it comes down to that. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up in the back camera. But the front camera is also an 8 megapixel sensor, and as I stated before, it's a single camera. Most front cameras are, but the main problem, I think it's a good camera, but the main problem with this type of setup is actually the fact that it can only do 1080p at 30 here too. And again, as I've always stated, it's always good to have more cameras than not on the back, but also higher resolutions you can film in on the front. That way it kind of future proofs you, and that's kind of the one area where you're kind of taking an L on this point. It's not that big of a deal though, it's totally up to you, but I think the back camera kind of makes up for it. So I think the back camera is really good, and I think the front camera is kind of average when you even consider the price and stuff. So in terms of the camera setup, that pretty much covers it up. Now